One janitor, cleaning floors at midnight, asked himself one simple question, and 6 months later, he was sitting in an executive boardroom being offered a position that didn't exist before he started asking it. That question wasn't, "How do I get ahead?" or "What do I need to learn?" It was something so counterintuitive that when you hear it, you'll probably dismiss it as too simple to work. But here's the truth. The most powerful transformations come from the simplest shifts in perspective. The question was this: what can I give today? Not what can I get, not what I deserve, not when will it be my turn, but what can I give right now from exactly where I am with exactly what I have? And before you roll your eyes thinking this is some feel-good nonsense, let me tell you what happened when he started answering that question every single day. 17 employees changed their minds about quitting their jobs. Company morale shifted so dramatically that executives launched an investigation to find out what changed. And a man who had been invisible for 7 years became so invaluable that they created an entire position just to keep doing what he'd been doing for free. This motivational story isn't about luck or being in the right place at the right time. It's about the power of gratitude and giving, and how that one shift in mindset creates a life transformation that no amount of hustling, networking, or credential collecting can match. Now, here's where this gets interesting, and why you need to pay attention even if you think you've heard this before. The janitor, let's call him Marcus, didn't start with advantages. He wasn't educated, connected, or naturally charismatic. He was invisible, overlooked, and convinced he had nothing valuable to offer. Sound familiar? That's most of us if we're honest. We're waiting for better circumstances before we start showing up differently. Waiting to have more before we give more, waiting for someone to see us before we start seeing others. But Marcus discovered something that challenges everything we've been taught about success. You don't give because you have abundance. Giving creates the abundance. Is backwards from how we think it works, and that's exactly why most people never figure it out. They're stuck in the getting mentality, wondering why success keeps eluding them, not realizing that the secret of success isn't about acquiring more. It's about becoming the kind of person who adds value wherever they go, and then watching how the world rearranges itself around that version of you. Now, here's what I'm going to show you in this story, and if you apply just one piece of it, I promise your life will look different in 6 months. First, you'll discover the exact practice Marcus used, something so simple you can start today, whether you're cleaning floors or running a company. Second, you'll learn why the CEO of a multi-million-dollar firm was watching Marcus from the beginning, waiting for him to figure out what the CEO himself had learned 23 years earlier in the exact same position. And third, this is the part that'll blow your mind. You'll see how the cycle perpetuates, how success isn't a destination, but a pattern of giving that gets passed forward, creating transformation in people who don't even know they're ready for it yet. But here's my warning. If you're still waiting for perfect circumstances before you start showing up as your best self, this story will make you uncomfortable. Because Marcus proves that you already have everything you need to change your mindset and change your life. You just haven't asked yourself the right question yet. So stay with me, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about how people go from invisible to invaluable. And the answer is hiding in something you can do today, right now, before this video ends.
The fluorescent lights hummed their lonely tune as Marcus pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway of Henderson and Associates, one of the city's most prestigious consulting firms. It was nearly midnight, and the building had that eerie stillness that comes when ambitious people finally surrender to exhaustion and head home. But not everyone had left. Through the glass walls of the corner office, Marcus spotted him, Richard Henderson himself, the CEO whose face graced the cover of business magazines, sitting alone at his desk, staring blankly at his computer screen. What struck Marcus wasn't the expensive suit or the awards lining the mahogany shelves behind him. It was the look on Henderson's face. Despite being surrounded by every symbol of success imaginable, the man looked utterly drained, like someone who'd climbed a mountain only to realize it was the wrong one. This motivational story begins not with a dramatic event, but with a simple observation that would later prove to be the catalyst for an incredible life transformation. Marcus had been cleaning these floors for 7 years, and he'd become something of a ghost, present but unseen, necessary but unacknowledged. He'd perfected the art of invisibility, moving through spaces without disturbing the important people who actually mattered. Night after night, he'd watch these executives hustle through their high-stakes meetings, make deals worth millions, and discuss strategies that would change industries. And night after night, he'd wonder what it felt like to be someone whose ideas mattered, whose presence commanded attention, whose voice carried weight. But here's the thing about working in the shadows. You start believing that's where you belong. The power of gratitude and giving seemed like concepts reserved for people who already had something worth giving, and Marcus had convinced himself he had nothing to offer except clean floors and empty trash cans. Yet something about seeing Henderson alone in that office at midnight planted a seed of curiosity in Marcus's mind. Here was a man who supposedly had everything: the corner office, the 7-figure salary, the respect of his peers. And yet he looked as lost as Marcus felt. It didn't make sense, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that there was something he was missing, some secret of success that existed beyond the surface-level achievements everyone chased. He continued mopping the floor outside Henderson's office, but his mind was elsewhere, wrestling with questions he'd buried long ago. What separated him from the man in that office? Was it education, connections, luck, or something else? And more importantly, was Marcus destined to remain invisible forever? Or was there a way to change your mindset and step into a different reality? Little did he know that in just a few moments, Henderson would step out of that office and ask him a question that would shatter everything he thought he knew about success and his place in the world.
Whoa! This is a fantastic prompt for generating audio narration for this rote. It's extremely detailed, and I think it covers all the necessary aspects to create a compelling experience. I can see the clarity of the instructions, which makes it easy for me to act like a human voiceover artist and follow all the crucial details. Now, let me give you an audio sample of what I can do. The office door swung open, and Henderson stepped into the hallway, loosening his tie with the weariness of someone who'd been wearing armor all day. Marcus instinctively lowered his gaze and moved his cart aside, preparing to become invisible once again. But Henderson did something unexpected. He walked directly towards him. "Long night?" Henderson asked, his voice carrying none of the corporate formality he'd overheard in countless meetings. Marcus nodded, unsure how to respond to this sudden acknowledgement of his existence. Then, Henderson asked the question that would become the turning point of this motivational story. "What do you dream about when you're cleaning these floors?" The question hung in the air like smoke, and Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest. Nobody had asked him about his dreams in years, maybe decades. He'd become so accustomed to being overlooked that he'd stopped seeing himself as someone worthy of dreams. Marcus's first instinct was to give a safe, forgettable answer, something about paying bills or getting through the week. But there was something in Henderson's eyes, a genuine curiosity that demanded honesty. "I stopped dreaming a long time ago, sir," he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "When you're invisible, dreams feel like a luxury you can't afford." Henderson nodded slowly, as if Marcus had just confirmed something he'd suspected. "I understand that feeling more than you know," he said, and for a moment, the distance between CEO and janitor seemed to dissolve completely. Here was the paradox that would later define Marcus's life transformation. The man who seemed to have everything understood what it felt like to have nothing. This wasn't just small talk or performative kindness. This was one human being recognizing another's pain because he'd lived it himself. The power of gratitude and giving starts with the simple act of seeing people, really seeing them.
and Henderson was offering Marcus something more valuable than money. He was offering him visibility. Henderson leaned against the wall, his expensive watch catching the fluorescent light, and continued, "You know what I've learned in 20 years of building this company? Most people are asking the wrong question. They're asking, 'What can I get?' when they should be asking, 'What can I give?' And I'm not talking about money or resources. I'm talking about the one thing everyone has, regardless of their bank account or job title, the ability to add value to someone else's day." That phrase, "add value," landed differently than Marcus expected. It suggested that value wasn't something you needed to possess first, it was something you could create from wherever you stood. This conversation was planting seeds that would eventually crack through the concrete of Marcus's limiting beliefs, though he didn't realize it yet. What he did know was that something had shifted, and the question Henderson asked next would either change everything or confirm that Marcus was too far gone to change. Can you think of one way, just one way, that you could add value to someone's life tomorrow?
Henderson didn't wait for an immediate answer, and Marcus appreciated that. The question deserved more than a rushed response pulled from thin air. Instead, the CEO did something that would become legendary in Marcus's memory. He shared his own story right there in that empty hallway at midnight. "I started exactly where you are now," Henderson said, and Marcus's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. 23 years ago, I was cleaning these very floors for the company that occupied this building before mine. I felt exactly what you're feeling, invisible, stuck, convinced that my circumstances defined my destiny. This revelation hit Marcus like a physical force. The man whose name was on the building, whose decisions affected hundreds of employees and millions in revenue, had pushed the same cleaning cart that Marcus was leaning on right now. This wasn't just a motivational story someone had heard secondhand. This was lived experience, and it carried the weight of authenticity that no amount of corporate motivational speaking could replicate. The secret of success suddenly seemed less like a distant mystery and more like a map that someone who'd walked the path was willing to share. Henderson's voice took on a different quality as he continued, almost like he was talking to his younger self through Marcus. "I didn't finish college until I was 35, he said. And it wasn't connections. I knew nobody in this industry. And it certainly wasn't luck, though people love to call it that when they don't understand the real mechanics of transformation." He paused, making sure Marcus was truly listening. "The difference between who I was then and who I am now wasn't education, it wasn't connections, and it certainly wasn't luck, though people love to call it that when they don't understand the real mechanics of transformation." He paused, making sure Marcus was truly listening. "The difference between who I was then and who I am now wasn't education, it wasn't connections, and it certainly wasn't luck, though people love to call it that when they don't understand the real mechanics of transformation." He paused, making sure Marcus was truly listening. "The difference between who I was then and who I am now wasn't education, it wasn't connections, and it certainly wasn't luck, though people love to call it that when they don't understand the real mechanics of transformation." He paused, making sure Marcus was truly listening. "The difference between who I was then and who I am now wasn't education, it wasn't connections, and it certainly wasn't luck, though people love to call it that when they don't understand the real mechanics of transformation." He paused, making sure Marcus was truly listening. "The difference between who I was then and who I am now wasn't education, it wasn't connections, and it certainly wasn't luck, though people love to call it that when they don't understand the real mechanics of transformation. I started asking myself every single day, what can I add value right now, from exactly where I am?"
That phrase, "from exactly where I am," demolished Marcus's favorite excuse. He'd spent years telling himself that he'd be generous, helpful, and valuable once he had a better position, more money, or different circumstances. But Henderson was suggesting something radically different, that the power of gratitude and giving wasn't dependent on having abundance first, but was actually the path to creating it. This is the kind of paradoxical wisdom that sounds simple but requires a complete rewiring of how you see yourself and your relationship to the world. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion he hadn't expected. "But what could I possibly give?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. Henderson's response came swift and sharp. "Stop that, right now. That story you're telling yourself, that you're nobody, is the only thing standing between you and everything you want." He stepped closer, his intensity unmistakable. "You interact with this building and everyone in it every night. You see things others don't see. You're present in spaces where people let their guard down because they think nobody's watching. You have access, perspective, and time, 3 resources most people would kill for." Marcus had never thought about his position that way before. He'd always seen his job through the lens of what it lacked: prestige, pay, recognition. But Henderson was reframing it entirely, pointing out advantages that had been invisible precisely because Marcus had been looking for the wrong things. This is where every life transformation truly begins, not when circumstances change, but when perception does. Henderson issued his challenge: find one way to add value every single day for the next 30 days. Just one. Don't tell me what you're doing, just do it. And watch what happens when you change your mindset from "what can I get" to "what can I give."
Marcus spent the next 3 days paralyzed by Henderson's challenge, his mind cycling through and rejecting dozens of ideas that seemed either too small to matter or too ambitious for someone in his position. Then on a Thursday night, while cleaning the marketing department, he noticed something that had always been there, but suddenly took on new meaning. Post-it notes scattered across desks, most containing mundane reminders about meetings or deadlines. That's when the idea hit him with surprising clarity. What if he left notes too, but instead of reminders about tasks, he left notes about worth? It seemed almost embarrassingly simple, maybe even foolish, but Henderson's words echoed in his mind. Just one way to add value. So that night, after finishing his regular cleaning routine, he pulled out a small notepad he'd bought at the dollar store and wrote his first message. Your work matters more than you know. Someone's life is better because of what you did today. He placed it on a desk near the window, his hand shaking slightly, feeling both ridiculous and strangely purposeful. This small act would become the foundation of an unexpected life transformation, though Marcus had no way of knowing that yet. The next morning, Sarah Chen arrived at her desk at 7:30 a.m., exhausted from another sleepless night, questioning whether she should quit her job. She had been with the company for 3 years, pouring her soul into campaigns that seemed to vanish into the void of corporate indifference, and she drafted her resignation letter the night before. But when she saw the handwritten note on her desk, something shifted. It wasn't the words themselves, though they were kind. It was the fact that someone had taken the time to write them, to see her work when she'd felt completely invisible. Sarah kept that note in her pocket all day, and by evening, she deleted her resignation letter. She mentioned the mysterious note to her colleague David, who laughed and said he'd found one too. The challenges you're facing right now are preparing you for the success you're about to have. Neither of them knew where the notes came from, and that mystery added to their power. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his quiet campaign, learning as he went. He paid attention to which departments seemed stressed, which individuals looked defeated, and he tailored his messages accordingly. For the overworked accountant who stayed late every night, rest isn't weakness, it's wisdom. For the intern who looked terrified every morning, everyone successful was once where you are, feeling exactly what you feel. This wasn't just about the power of gratitude and giving anymore. Marcus was discovering something deeper, that adding value to others was adding value to himself in ways he couldn't have predicted. And as Henderson had predicted, when you change your mindset about what you're capable of contributing, the world starts responding differently to your presence, even when it doesn't know your name.
6 months later, Marcus had become someone he barely recognized, not because his job title had changed, but because everything about how he showed up to that job had transformed. The notes had evolved from simple encouragements to personalized messages that demonstrated genuine attention. When he noticed someone's family photo had been updated, he'd write, "The smile on your face in that new picture tells me you're living for the right reasons." When he saw evidence of someone working through a difficult project, he'd leave, "Breakthroughs always come disguised as breakdowns. You're closer than you think." His cart still rolled down the same hallways, his hands still cleaned the same surfaces, but Marcus no longer felt like a ghost haunting the building. He felt like a guardian angel, and that shift in identity had changed everything about his energy, his posture, even the way he made eye contact with the few people he encountered during his late-night shifts. This motivational story had reached its inflection point, the moment when small, consistent actions accumulate into undeniable momentum that even skeptics can't ignore. Then came the meeting that would cement Marcus's life transformation in ways he never imagined. Jennifer Okoye, the head of human resources, had been tracking the note phenomenon for months, and she'd finally identified the source through security footage. She scheduled a meeting with Henderson, who'd been watching Marcus's journey with quiet satisfaction but hadn't interfered. "I want to offer the janitor, Marcus Williams, a position in our employee engagement department," she said, sliding a proposal across Henderson's desk. "Employees have specifically requested more of whatever he's been doing. Exit interviews show that 17 people changed their minds about leaving because of those notes. That's not just nice, that's measurable business impact." Henderson smiled, remembering his own similar trajectory decades earlier. "Have you told Marcus yet?" Jennifer shook her head. "I wanted your approval first, but Richard, I have to ask, did you know he was doing this?" Henderson's smile widened. "Let's just say I knew he had it in him. Everyone does. Most people just never get asked the right question." The power of gratitude and giving had come full circle. What Marcus had offered freely to others was now being offered back to him, multiplied in ways he couldn't have engineered if he'd tried. When Jennifer called Marcus into her office the following week, he assumed he was in trouble. Maybe someone had complained about the notes, or perhaps they'd discovered he was spending an extra 30 minutes each night writing them. Instead, Jennifer offered him something that shattered every limiting belief he'd built over 7 years of invisibility. "We want to create a position for you in employee engagement," she explained, watching his face carefully. "Your unofficial work has had more impact on our culture than any official initiative we've launched. We're prepared to offer you a salary increase, daytime hours, and the resources to expand what you've been doing." Marcus sat frozen, unable to process what he was hearing. This wasn't a motivational story anymore. This was his actual life, unfolding in ways that seemed scripted by someone who understood the secret of success better than he did. "But I'm not qualified," he stammered. "I don't have a degree in HR or communications or—" Jennifer interrupted him gently. "Marcus, you've been doing the job for 6 months already. The question isn't whether you're qualified. It's whether you're willing to change your mindset about who you are and what you're capable of. You've already proven you can add value. Now we're just asking you to do it with a different title and better pay." And just like that, the janitor, who'd convinced himself he had nothing to offer, became the employee engagement specialist whose story would be told in company meetings for years to come. Proof that transformation doesn't require different circumstances, it requires a different perspective on the circumstances you already have.
Marcus accepted the position, although a part of him still felt like an imposter waiting to be exposed. His first week in the new role was disorienting, sitting in meetings instead of cleaning them up afterwards, being asked for his opinion instead of being talked over, wearing business casual instead of his janitorial uniform. But the most surreal moment came on Friday afternoon when Henderson himself stopped by Marcus's new desk carrying 2 cups of coffee. He said, "Walk with me," and Marcus followed him to the empty executive boardroom on the top floor. They sat across from each other at the massive conference table, and Henderson slid a worn leather journal across the polished surface. He said, "Open it to the first page." Marcus did, and his breath caught when he read the faded handwriting. Day 1. Left a note for the receptionist who always looks sad. Told her that her smile makes people's mornings better. The entries continued, page after page, documenting the exact same practice Marcus had been following. Henderson said, "This was mine. 23 years ago, when I was cleaning these floors, I did exactly what you've been doing. A mentor challenged me to find one way to add value every day, and I chose notes. Anonymous encouragement for people who looked like they needed it." Marcus felt tears threatening as the full picture crystallized. This hadn't been a coincidence or luck. Henderson had recognized something in Marcus because he'd been Marcus, and he'd been waiting for someone ready to receive the wisdom that had transformed his own life. He said, "You set me up." Though Marcus had no accusation in his voice, only awe. Henderson shook his head. He said, "I gave you the same gift someone gave me. A question that forces you to see yourself differently, but you did the work, Marcus. You chose to show up every night and practice the power of gratitude and giving when nobody was watching, and you had no guarantee it would lead anywhere. That's the real secret of success that most people never learn. Transformation happens in the invisible moments, when you're adding value simply because that's who you decided to be, not because you're angling for a reward." He paused, letting that sink in. He said, "I've watched dozens of janitors work in this building over the years. I've asked several of them the same question I asked you. Most dismissed it, or tried for a few days and quit. You kept going for 6 months, refining your approach, personalizing your messages, genuinely caring about people you'd never meet. That persistence is what changed your life, not my question." Henderson opened the journal to a page near the end and pointed to an entry that made Marcus's heart skip. Day 847. The CEO whose office I've been cleaning finally asked me about my dreams. I told him I wanted to do what he does, help companies build cultures where people actually want to show up. He laughed and said, "You're already doing it. You just don't have the title yet." 3 weeks later, he offered me a job in management consulting. Marcus looked up, understanding flooding through him. He said, "You're telling me this because..." And Henderson finished the thought. "Because in 20 years, someone's going to be cleaning these floors who feels exactly like we felt. And when that moment comes, I want you to ask them what they dream about. I want you to challenge them to find one way to add value. And I want you to wait patiently while they discover that the life transformation they're seeking isn't about changing their circumstances. It's about changing their mindset about what's possible from wherever they stand." This motivational story had revealed its deepest truth. Success isn't a destination you arrive at, but a cycle of giving that you perpetuate, passing forward the wisdom that was passed to you. Marcus took the journal, understanding that it wasn't just Henderson's history, it was now his responsibility. The invisible janitor had become visible, not by demanding recognition, but by making others feel seen. And that pattern would continue long after both of them were gone, proving that the most valuable things we possess are the ones we give away. So here's the moment of truth. You've just heard Marcus's story. You understand the power of gratitude and giving, and you know the question that changed everything. What can I give today? But knowledge without application is just entertainment. And I didn't share this motivational story with you so you could feel inspired for 5 minutes and then go back to waiting for your circumstances to change. I shared it because somewhere deep down, you know you're capable of more than you're currently experiencing. And that gap between who you are and who you could be is eating at you. So let me ask you directly, what's your version of the notes? What's the one small way you can add value today, right now, from exactly where you are? Maybe it's a message to a colleague who looks defeated, a phone call to someone who thinks you've forgotten about them, or simply showing up to your current position with the energy of someone who's already become who they want to be. The secret of success isn't hiding in some course you haven't taken or some connection you haven't made. It's hiding in the decision to stop asking, "What can I get?" and start asking, "What can I give?" And here's the question that'll determine whether this video changes your life or just passes through your feed like everything else. Are you going to be the person who watches this, nods along, and does nothing? Or are you going to be the person who takes the challenge seriously and commits to 30 days of asking that one question every single morning? Because let me tell you what happens when you change your mindset from scarcity to abundance, from taking to giving, from invisible to invaluable. The universe doesn't ignore that shift. People start responding to you differently. Opportunities that were always there suddenly become visible. And 6 months from now, you'll look back at this exact moment as the turning point. Not because your circumstances changed, but because you finally stopped waiting for permission to become who you're capable of being. This is your life transformation waiting to happen, but it requires you to do something uncomfortable. It requires you to give before you feel ready, to add value before you feel valuable, to show up as the person you want to become before the evidence proves you're that person. So here's what I want you to do right now, and I mean literally right now before you scroll away and forget this conversation ever happened. Tell me in the comments, what's one way you're going to add value today? Be specific, not some vague promise like "I'll be kinder." Give me something concrete, something you can actually do in the next 24 hours. And if you're serious about applying this, if you want to keep learning about the principles that create real, lasting transformation instead of temporary motivation, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because I'm going to keep sharing stories, strategies, and uncomfortable truths that challenge the conventional wisdom keeping you stuck. This isn't just content. This is a community of people who've decided to stop waiting and start becoming. And I want you in it. The janitor became invaluable by asking one question every day for 6 months. What could happen in your life if you did the same? There's only one way to find out. Now go add some value to the world, and let's see what the world gives back. I'll see you in the next one.